We are joined by Julie Flowers, City Council President, Councilor at Large, City of Beverly. And Julie, thanks so much for joining us. It's good to catch up with you and see you again after some time here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Bill. It's always nice to talk with you.
Just for our listeners, or now viewers, if you will, you're running for re-election. You are the City Council President. We are recording this on Monday with a council meeting scheduled for Monday night at City Hall. So we just keep that in mind as we go over some of these things. But Julie, I want you to touch on one of the agenda items in tonight's meeting. And again, as people see this, it would be Monday night's meeting this week. But you're honoring police and fire or first responders that haven't been recognized at the council meetings for a number of years. So share with us what happens in that meeting.
Yeah, thank you. We had the chance to do fire already this year. So tonight will be just our police officers. But you're right, this is a chance for us to honor police, particularly those who have been, they're either hired new to our department during the pandemic. Essentially, these are officers who were hired or promoted during the years that meeting in person was disrupted. A lot of meetings for not only our city, but across municipalities and across industries were happening virtually. And so basically we're picking up a tradition that used to be very common and commonplace before the pandemic, where new officers or officers who were being promoted were able to have a time in the council chambers with the council, with the chief, but also to invite their families and any other invited guests that they would want to bring with them to have those moments recognized. And so we have not had a chance to do that in person. We had not had a chance to do that for our fire department. We've had a chance to do that. It was really wonderful to see families and friends and to see those firefighters be able to be celebrated. And so tonight we'll have the chance to do that for police officers who have joined the Beverly Police Department or been promoted in the police department during this pandemic period. And so it's really a chance to recognize them, to celebrate them, and for their families to be able to be with them while we do that as well. So we're going to start the meeting that way. As you said, we're recording it the day of, but that if people check it out later on BevCam's streaming, they'll see that right at the beginning.
You stole all my thunder here on promoting BevCam for you guys, but it's live and then on demand on YouTube. But yes. I want to just digress for 1 second here. You were in the city council before the pandemic. You're here now as we emerge out of the pandemic. What is your take on running government, remotely, if you will, or by Zoom meetings or whatever, opposed to being back in person as you are at City Hall and have been for a while?
I think during the pandemic, the city of Beverly really did, I think, an excellent job of being able to continue to function with the tools that were at our disposal. And, every municipality was grappling with that. Every person was grappling with that. But I think it to me, it was a significant shift. In some ways, we had to do it very abruptly in terms of council meetings. It was learning sort of a whole new way of being together as a city council, and even to sort of move through a council meeting. When you meet fully remotely, every vote has to be a roll call vote, for example. When we're in person, it's done by hand raising and saying aye, but you can't necessarily get a sense on a remote meeting of how many voices are saying aye, or you see all the hands. So there were some shifts. We had to learn them quickly. I think the city did a really good job of continuing to move through that time. I also think that there's really nothing that can fully compare to the ability to be in person together, to really have those moments where you're interacting fully. As human beings, we are programmed to read not only one another's words, but so much about facial expressions and body language. And so I think all of us probably experience this in remote meetings of all kinds, but our brains work that much harder to try to figure out, what's the facial expression? Is that person reacting to me or to someone else? And so I think we get so much more rich communication from one another, and not just among counselors. I think for members of the public as well, when they can make the choice to join us in person if they wish. Of course, some great things that have come out of the pandemic are just an increased attention and realization to how important, you mentioned BevCam, and I have too, but streaming services local community access television like BevCam, the fact that people can still choose to follow their local government from wherever they are if they're not able to come in person, that option is available. And one thing that I would like to see our city council continue to move towards, it's basically been limited thus far by the age of council chambers. So City Hall is getting renovated, so this will sort of course correct, but I think we did learn that one way to open up access, and we learned it during the pandemic, is to have remote participation for the public in, for example, a public hearing. And so when we can sort of run hybrid meetings where councilors are in person, but members of the public can choose to come in person or speak from a remote platform, I think that's a good thing for everyone. It opens up more access for people. And that's something I think we learned as a result of that the state of emergency we were in, but I think it's a good thing we can carry forward with us.
No, exactly. And if it weren't for the pandemic, we wouldn't be doing this kind of interview here. We would
That's true too.
still be doing in-person
That's true
interviews
too.
and so on. So it's a win, and you win some, you lose some, I guess. But so let me ask you, let's tick through some of the top stories in Beverly that
Sure.
come before the council or come before residents. One is the Family Dollar store taking of eminent domain. So give us an update and give our listeners an update on that and where that's headed or may be headed.
Sure. Yeah. So this is a big topic. It's been voted on and decided. So I started to say was, but it's certainly
Yeah.
not, it's not ended. It will be an ongoing process. So just as a quick synopsis, this was a proposed what people sometimes casually refer to as a friendly taking that came before the city council, proposed by the mayor's administration. And a friendly taking really just means that the two parties, the municipality and the private owner, have been in conversation together. You know, there are situations that you can imagine with eminent domain or that we've read about sometimes in other places where a municipality has to take something for the public good, and it's sort of done whether or not the private property owner it has been part of the conversation. This was different than that in that the city mayor's administration had approached the private property owner, and there had been conversation and work back and forth to come to the conclusion about what might be proposed to the city council. So ultimately the council voted to support this proposal, and the city will take ownership of the property on Cabot Street, kind of collectively and formally known as the Family Dollar building. What the public good benefits that sort of are coming out of this are, because you can't, a municipality cannot take something by eminent domain for no reason. There's particular public good that has to come from it. It has to fall under certain laws. But there's parking behind that building that actually the city has been leasing from the former property owner and using essentially as city parking, but we have been leasing it. I think a lot of times people living in Beverly or coming to Beverly didn't realize that it wasn't actually a city lot, that we were leasing it, because it's been part of what sort of has been collectively our downtown parking for so long that it sort of felt like city parking. But we were being faced with the reality where the plans to develop the building privately would also have greatly reduced that parking and made it private parking. Right now, Beverly's downtown is really growing and thriving, and that's a good thing. But to continue to help support businesses and growth in our downtown and people who come from out of town to enjoy a restaurant, shop, see a show at the Cabot or the Lark Room or off Cabot, we've got so many great opportunities. It was important to think creatively about a way that we might preserve that parking, but also having that building as a city property for now means that we can do a couple of other things that I think are really creative and important, but also achieve some important goals that the city has. One is that we can put an RFP, which is a request for proposal, to develop sort of above that parking a smaller unit of fully affordable housing. So because the city owns the property now, the RFP could stipulate that what we want to see there is housing, but that it be fully affordable, a fully affordable housing development, which is really important. I think it's been a big conversation, not only in Beverly, but on the North Shore. The cost of housing is very high, and there just isn't enough housing to house everybody. So that's one thing we can do. And then City Hall is being renovated, as I said. So owning the front part of the property means that City Hall employees can be moved sort of en masse to that building. City Hall will remain largely intact, everyone working in one space in the downtown, while the current City Hall building, our City Hall building, is renovated, made more accessible, brought up to date. And then when City Hall employees are able to be back in the City Hall building, the city can choose to RFP that front property, sell it, but again, can think about what we might like to see there as a community, because the city will be the property owner. So we can think about affordable housing. In my view, I'd like to see us think about preserving live work space for artists. Something that was lost in that building at this point when it was sold was there was studio space for artists. And we have such a thriving artist community. And I'd love to see us think creatively about what else having that property might allow us to do, including thinking about the use of the retail space, which would remain, the active streetscape would remain, but thinking about what might Beverly do as a creative municipal leader to think about ensuring, for example, one of the things I keep talking about is access for people who live downtown, maybe don't have cars, want to be in a more walkable community, to a place where they can get food, groceries, because right now we don't have a walkable grocery store in our downtown. So that's what's going on with that. In the short term, it will be a temporary city hall. In the long term, I think lots of exciting possibilities are open to us.
All right, I think I can make a nice smooth transition to this
Okay.
next topic here, because you're talking about housing, affordability, all of that
Yes.
stuff. So let's talk about accessory dwelling units. This is something that a lot of cities and towns are dealing with now.
Yes.
And I know Beverly is dealing with it. And so maybe explain that issue to our listeners once again here, how that works and where Beverly is at trying to create more housing opportunities for families already in Beverly.
Thank you. Yeah, accessory dwelling units are definitely sort of a hot topic as well right now. Essentially, a lot of our conversation in Beverly so far when we've talked about housing is about dense housing. So in our downtown and developing areas that are housing dense, that might be apartment buildings or larger units that contain multiple units of housing. And that is one really good model to add housing stock. But another way to think about adding some housing is to think about creating accessory dwelling units as a by right option, which just is it's a way of talking about a zoning change, really. Because right now, to add on an accessory dwelling unit, colloquially, people might know of that when they think about what people used to call an in-law apartment. So it means adding a living space to usually a single family or a larger home on in a more residential area that may not be as densely residential. And so it does open up options that aren't available in all parts of our city. There are definitely parts of our city where dense housing works, it's zoned for, but there are parts of our city where it's zoned for single family residences, for example. And one way to add housing or to be able to help people retain their housing in Beverly, as you said, is to consider making accessory dwelling units a by right option, which would allow people to add these second living unit, a small apartment, a small living space that's separate from their main living space onto their home, and to make that easier for people to do. Right now in Beverly, we don't have a great mechanism for that. It tends to fall under sort of a bed and breakfast kind of mechanism. And there's some outdated language that talks about the person living in the accessory unit in our language currently has to be a blood relative, which just doesn't allow for people to think expansively about who might be able to make use of the living space that adjoins their home. But they're also a great way to think about not only adding new housing, but helping people who already have housing. For example, I talk to a lot of seniors who live in Beverly who have owned their home for 40 or 50 years and really would like to downsize. They'll say, this house is a little too big for me. I'm ready to move to something else. I've paid off my home. I've paid off my mortgage, but the truth is it's too expensive to move. And I'd like to stay in Beverly because at this point, the housing market is so high. So a lot of people feel stuck in a home they've owned for many years. Having the ability to move into a smaller unit like these would allow them to stay in Beverly or potentially to stay even in their own home, but have another resident share the space with them and be able to create a sense of community, shared work, keeping up their lawn and their property. There's lots of ways that people, I think, use accessory dwelling units to meet their needs, but I think it would really be beneficial in terms of housing creation, affordable housing creation, housing for younger people, and also housing for our seniors. So I think it opens up a lot of possibilities for us.
Yeah, it is. But you're right. It probably falls under the zoning umbrella, right, and all of
Yes.
that. Yeah. So, but it's something to think about, and that process is moving forward in Beverly. Speaking of moving forward, ever so slowly, what's up with the Hall Whitaker Bridge here now? So, that story burst onto the scene now, probably about a year ago now, but maybe not quite a year ago. But where do you and Beverly stand with that?
Yeah, the Hall Whitaker Bridge, you're right, is moving more slowly than I think any of us in Beverly wish that it would be. As we've heard now, it's a Mass DOT project, which means that there are some pieces of it that really they're moving at the pace that the Mass DOT can accelerate them, which is not as fast by any stretch as how fast any of us wish that it would be. There is an important update coming, and that's going to be on June 27th. There's a community meeting. It's 6:30 to 8 o'clock. It's at the Beverly High School auditorium. It's open to the whole community, of course. It also will be shown on BevCam, so it'll be streaming. So if people can't get there, they can follow it live that way. They'll also be able to watch it later. But what we'll be hearing about from MassDOT at that meeting is they'll be presenting the 25% bridge designs for the temporary fixed span bridge. And that basically means their plan to put a temporary bridge in that space so that the public can actually be able to cross the river there again while they work on the permanent fixture that will become the new Hall Whitaker Bridge. So this will be an opportunity for the public to see the 25% design. I know that sounds kind of like a funny milestone, but that's part of the MassDOT process, and the engineering process is to have these sort of benchmarks. But the public can ask questions, and also we can share feedback there with them. So the ultimate goal is that they will build this temporary bridge, do the work on the permanent structure in place while people can travel across the temporary bridge, and then remove the temporary bridge.
See, I go so far back, Julie. I remember when people were saying there will never ever be another Beverly Salem Bridge, and that yet there is, and I guess they just finished the Bourne Bridge down on the Cape, right? Or that bridge too. So maybe it'll happen, albeit it'll take some time for sure. Finally, we're into budget season here. Cities and towns are grappling with this. People are hearing about town meetings, town elections. Now, of course, cities are dealing with the process with school budgets, city budgets, the internal budgets that the
Yes.
mayor might oversee, and so on, in the council. So, where is Beverly right now in this budget process? Here we are, middle of May.
Yes, so we are coming right up to our budget cycle. And so the school committee actually has just had their public hearing on the school portion of the budget. And what that means is they're sort of at the end of their process, and that school's portion of the budget will come now over to be folded into the larger budget that the mayor will present to the city council. And that's going to be on May 25th. He'll present the budget officially. And if people are interested in the budget process and following it, I will say the May 25th meeting where the mayor presents it, people can come in public, they can watch it streaming, but I think people are often surprised by the brevity of that one. That one is truly just a presentation. There's not questions from counselors at that point. So I just say that so that people aren't taken aback when they see how short that one is. But that really is just a sort of formalized way for the council to receive the budget. And then after that, we enter a series of finance and property subcommittee meetings where department heads, as you said, there's all these department heads present their individual budgets, and the counselors can ask questions. So it's finance and property subcommittee, but generally are attended by all counselors. All counselors are able to ask questions. Those will start on May 30th. That's a Tuesday. And there will be 4 department heads presenting that day. And that will just kick off a series of budget processes, subcommittee meetings. People will be able to find those on the city agenda center. We'll be talking about them at council meetings. I'll be posting them on my city councilor Facebook page and networks as well. But the one that people may really want to make note of is the public hearing on the budget. And that is on June 13th. That's a Tuesday. And that kind of is the culmination of this series of individual meetings with department heads, and the public can come and make comments, ask questions, weigh in on what they think about the budget, and that will then move the city council to be able to put a final vote on the budget at the end of June. The deadline basically for municipalities is within the state of Massachusetts is to have acted on their budget by the end of June. you can't go into July without an approved budget. And so we've got a schedule that puts us in position to be able to do that very responsibly.
That's right. Right. It's right to the end though, but that's the way
Yep.
it works. That's the way it has to work. You're right.
Yep.
And I can, as someone like yourself that sits through a lot of meetings and willingly sits through a lot of meetings, I might add. But when you note the May 25th short meeting or short presentation, I can see why you remember that one being a short presentation for sure.
It is notably short, but I don't want to catch the public off guard if they watch that one and think, was that it? Because that certainly would not be sufficient on the budget, but we're going to dig in a lot more after that.
These guys are very good. Look how quickly they did all this. You're right. Well, Julie, we've covered a lot of topics that, I kind of wanted to cover that I think that residents kind of feel they probably need some updates on. So anything else that you want to share with us here on this as we talk on Monday again to post on Tuesday this week on our website?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I try to remind people of this all the time, that one of the things about your local municipal government that is so important is that you have the ability, every one of us has the ability as residents in Beverly to really be in direct contact with elected officials. So I love hearing from people, not just through public hearings, by email. You can reach out to me at jflowers@beverlyma.gov, through my social media channels, my city councilor channels, but hearing what people are seeing, feeling what's happening for them in the city, and ways that the city can help serve them better, or even just answer questions for them. So that public engagement is really important. And I think it's sort of a unique thing about this municipal level of government. Of course, we have participatory democracy at every level, but there is nowhere more participatory than your local level. So I would just encourage people to reach out if they have questions or comments. And I guess the other thing I'll say is I know spring and summer can be tough. It's paving season, it's roadwork season. In Beverly, we certainly have quite a lot of roadwork going on right now. Some of those are to address utility needs under streets. Some of those are paving. We also have a lot of roads that need paving and attention, sidewalks that need paving and attention. I hear from people often about their street. They're not wrong. Anybody who knows the condition of their street is correct. And we are continuing to try to plug away at those. I know city councilors have asked for more investment in roads and sidewalks in the budget. We invested more last year than we had in prior years. We're looking for that again. But I just want to acknowledge that if people are feeling frustrated getting around, it absolutely is tough. And hopefully in the end, the result will be solid utilities under our streets, gas, water mains being taken care of, and continued upgrading of our roads and sidewalks. And that will be for the good of all of us, for a more walkable, a more bikeable, and a more safely drivable city.
I should also not let you escape here without giving a plug for your campaign, because you are running for re-election. So give our listeners an update where that is, and if they want to check that out, where should they go for that? You might have already touched on some of those links or whatever, but feel free to mention that. We obviously want you to share that with our listeners as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is campaign season again for everyone running for office. And so I am running for re-election as one of your at-large councilors representing all 6 wards in Beverly. And so right now we're at the point where candidates, including myself, are still collecting signatures. Nomination papers will be due by August. And after that, you'll know who's officially on the ballot. So if I see you around Beverly, I'm happy to have your signature to earn a spot back on the ballot. And after that point, there'll be lots of opportunities to meet with me as a candidate, to engage with the campaign. You can always follow along on my Facebook channels. I have a regular city councilor page where I post regular updates of the city, which is Julie Flowers, Beverly City Councilor at Large. But I also have a campaign page, which is Julie Flowers for Beverly. And so you can check out that for any campaign updates and all that's going on with that. But I would certainly be honored to earn your vote and to earn another term as one of your at-large councilors.
All right. Well, Julie, great talking with you again. Thanks for all this information, and hopefully we'll be checking back again soon.
Thanks so much, Bill. It was great chatting with you.